Hello, everyone. We will be starting very shortly, so bear with us. We'll just give it another 20 seconds or so for as many people as possible to join. Thank you. Right, so I think we'll start. Hopefully, as many people as possible have managed to join us. So, good morning and welcome everyone to this Morgan Hunt webinar, Leading with Purpose in an AI-enabled world. This morning, we'll explore how AI is changing the way we work, and for leaders in the third and not-for-profit sector, how it brings both exciting opportunities and, of course, real challenges. So this promises to be an honest conversation about what leading in an AI-enabled world really means, the skills that leaders need, and how organizations and individuals can prepare for the future. My name is Claire Canary, and I am a director at Morgan Hunt, and I also lead on HR and employee wellbeing. And for those of you not familiar with us, Morgan Hunt is an award-winning national recruitment business with over 130 expert recruiters across the UK in Glasgow, Manchester, Birmingham, and London. We were established over 30 years ago, and Morgan Hunt provides specialist recruitment services to thousands of organisations across the public and private sector. And we're market leading recruiters in the further education, charity, and not for profit sectors. This topical webinar promises to be a really engaging session, and I'm delighted to be joined this morning by three wonderful guests, all with a different perspective on the growing impact of AI. Firstly, a warm welcome to Pippa Johnston, who is the Deputy CEO at Edinburgh Children's Hospital Charity and has recently steered that organisation through the development of its next 10-year strategy. She has a 25-year background in the voluntary sector, having worked in local, national, and UK-wide charities, predominantly in income generation and marketing. But over the last 10 years in particular, has led organisational strategy change, management, and restructure. She's currently a trustee at the Scottish Book Trust and has previously chaired the board of directors at the Bridges Project. We're also joined this morning by Stuart McSkimming, a recognised thought leader in the application of AI and emerging technologies for charities and not-for-profits. Named in the 2025 AI 100 list of top 100 people shaping the future of AI in the UK, Stuart brings over 2 decades of senior leadership experience in the sector with a focus on digital transformation, strategic alignment, and inclusive team development. He's also a founder of Virtue Chain, a consultancy dedicated to helping mission-driven organisations harness the power of technology and AI. Stuart also serves as a deputy chair of Charity IT Leaders, where he champions sector-wide collaboration, innovation, and leads the Charity AI Specialist Interest Group. And our final guest this morning is my wonderful Morgan Hunt colleague, Camryn Anderson, a senior manager for our marketing and communications business in Scotland with over a decade of recruitment industry experience. Camryn focuses on supporting organisations across the public and third sectors, helping them attract the skills and capability needed to communicate effectively, deliver impact, and drive meaningful change. She has a deep understanding of marketing and communications landscape and partners with leaders to navigate talent challenges, build high-performing teams, and shape recruitment strategies that reflect this evolving sector. Her insight into candidate motivation, labour market trends, and organisational needs has positioned her as a real trusted advisor to both candidates and clients alike. So, before we start our conversation this morning, just a few pointers on the format of our session. We'll aim to finish at about 10:30, giving us hopefully about 45 minutes for our general conversation, and ideally 10 to 15 minutes at the end for audience questions. So please, if you do have any questions, please post them in the YouTube chat that you're all online now. I will see your questions and we will aim to answer as many as possible, time allowing. So do keep posting and we'll look at those. So to kick off our conversation, I thought it would be good to start with a little quick opener, if that's okay. And Pippa, if I can come to you first, and then I'll come to you, Camryn, and then Stuart, if that's possible. So in one sentence, what excites you and what concerns you most about AI right now? Big question.
Yeah, difficult to put that in one sentence, but I was thinking about this because I knew we were going to get questions about this. Um, I think, funnily enough, I think most people veer towards the concern because everyone's afraid. But I was thinking it comes into three little things for me quickly. Pace. I think that's both a benefit and a real concern. It's changing so quickly. This is difficult. And I think people can get overwhelmed. And I think it can be difficult to keep up. So that's a concern, but also a real opportunity because it's quick and we can learn things and we can fail fast and it's great. Second thing I alluded to a little bit there is people. And the people, is people involved in this. That is amazing because people are brilliant and they can pick things up and they're flexible and they can just go with things. But also it's the people that can sometimes be the drag, the anchor, because they sometimes can't keep up or won't keep up or afraid. So I think as leaders, we have to nurture our people, concern but massive opportunity. And the last one, I mean, I'm being a bit of a guru here. I'm talking about the three P's, right? So I thought proportionality. So we don't all have to do everything in AI. Like if you've got a really small charity, you only have to do some things. We don't have to do it all. So let's think what's the proportional benefit? And don't worry about everyone's doing massive things. Just keep it proportional. And I think that those are the things that I think. They're both my concerns and my excitement.
Great. Thank you, Pippa. Camryn, what are your thoughts on that one?
I think similar to you, Pippa, there's loads that we can say, but one sentence is quite difficult to complete. So I think in my market, from a talent perspective, the opportunities is creating more strategic roles in our industry. Slowly but surely it is infiltrating into job descriptions where AI language is being put into the job descriptions. So it is a good piece just now because it's knowledge of, not experience in. So they're prepared to work with people that are dabbling just now rather than have the key skills. But that's a good opportunity. My main concern is how quickly the pace of change is affecting people's confidence and sense of career security. Time and time again, it just keeps coming up, is my job going to be here forever? And I think, we are our worst enemies sometimes, so it's natural feelings that come through, but it is trying to ground yourself in those moments. So my sort of double-sided sentence there, sorry.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, Camryn. I agree. And Stuart, from your perspective, from a more maybe technical perspective, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks, Claire. So for me, it's really simple. In the excite box, I'm really excited about the small scale things. I'm seeing so many exciting pilots, so many different things that organizations are actually doing where it's making such a difference. So I'm so excited about the capabilities on a micro level. What scares me, or what I have most concern around, is around the macro level, the huge changes that we can see in the world, both in society, both in the ways we see how AI can be used. But in terms of the charities and the not-for-profit sector, what really makes me nervous is that all of the big changes that are happening as a result of AI may actually negatively impact our causes, and we don't yet know. So it's a big unknown.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. And when we talk about leading with purpose, because clearly we're focused on those organizations that are purpose driven in that third not-for-profit sector, um, in an AI-enabled world, what does that mean for you in practice? So, Pippa, in your role, for example, what does that mean to you?
Well, I suppose it means having an eye on it myself. So being as a leader, being a little bit ahead of it. But I don't think I'm ahead of the curve at all. I'm catching up like everybody else. But I suppose as a leader, I must be more curious, more willing to change, more willing to step into it, have a go at it, so that then I can show people all my mistakes and we can learn together. And I also think we need to focus on us as leaders, you know, look at our purpose as charities, as organizations, and does this development move our purpose forward? And ask ourselves that question. Like,
Yeah.
you don't just have to do it. You have to ask, does it help us? What problem is this solving? And does it help the particular problem that we have? And if it's not helping the problem we have, you don't have to do it. Guess
Yeah.
what? So I think it's just being, again, a little bit more proportionate and just recognizing that it's behavioral change in people. These are all people. Everything's just people. Whether you're working for a big brand or a charity, the people are doing it. And so it's about just recognizing the differences in people and their pace and what they do, I think. And keeping an eye on that, really purposefully checking in with the people and bringing them along at a similar pace. Thank you. I think that'll do from me.
Thank you, Pippa. And Camryn, from your perspective, what do you think of when you think of that, leading with purpose?
I think for me as a recruiter, leading with purpose means always keeping people at the centre of AI change. My role heavily involves supporting and guiding teams on how roles are evolving, coaching candidates on skills that keep them relevant, and just making sure that AI supports meaningful work rather than replacing it. So I've got maybe a two-pronged answer here, because that's my sort of external facing role. Internally, about my team, it's about leading from the front, as cheesy as that sounds. We have implemented so many different AI tools at Morgan Hunt in my year of service here around call generated notes. AI captures all of that information for us. We have chatbots communicating with our applications. It's nurturing the data. There are multiple touch points. It's behind the scenes. And we've got a great CV formatting tool that means that we can really bring a candidate to life from our interview notes. So if I'm not doing any of that, how am I bringing the team along the way with me? And all of the human elements of our role is intuition, empathy, building trust, spending more time out the office than in the office. So if they're not following me in that journey or doing the role themselves, how is that building that team fit for purpose in the future? And to be quite candid with you, the team sometimes know a lot more than me because their job is day in, day out using these softwares a lot more than I am because my mobile phone still rings and it doesn't capture all the call information. So I think it's about, yes, we're ahead of the game, but also let's test and learn and talk to them and find out what's working and use that in the future to take feedback on board as well. So I think it's always good to learn from the people on the ground at all times as well.
Yeah, because we're all learning, and I think Pippa
Yeah.
said that, we're none of us are experts, maybe apart from you, Stuart. And we have to keep that in mind. So, Stuart, from your perspective, what does it mean? You're seeing the organizations all the time and talking to other tech leaders.
So I spend a lot of time advising chief executives how to actually use AI within their organizations. And the big thing I would say around this is around culture, which it seems an unusual thing to say. But when you've got big technology firms who are pumping unbelievable amounts of money into this new technology, it's very easy to get distracted by what a great bit of tech this is. Look at all the capabilities of it. Oh my God, it can do absolutely amazing things. But if you're going to actually get your organization through this, what you need to really be thinking about is what is our organizational culture all about. Think about your people, because if you're about to get into a world where technology is having a larger and larger role and is doing some things like things that people are doing, you could easily lose track of what that culture is. So keep that very clearly in your head.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And Pippa, coming back to you, and I think you've kind of touched on some of this, but just to delve a little bit deeper into it. I mean, how do you find that right balance between, the innovation and responsibility? And you talked about like you don't have to go with everything, and about keeping the values and where it's going to add value. But how do you find that balance between innovation and responsibility when you're leading such a mission-driven organization?
Yeah, I think it's checking in. It's not, I mean, I come back to this word pace again. I think it's making sure that you've got your eye on two things. which is how to drive your purpose forward. That's the responsibility in terms of your responsibility to your beneficiaries and to your people within that are doing the thing. But also your responsibility to those people is to do it as best you can and to make it quicker, make it better, get more reach. Surely everybody wants to help more things, more people do more. So, but the actual people are sometimes the blocker. So, I mean, I'll just come back to it. It really is it's listening. I found only yesterday I was in a meeting where I was trying to push something through a little too quickly, I might add. And someone's in the meeting said to me, can we just chunk this down? I wanted to do something about SharePoint, which is all where our stuff is collected. And I thought, this is an entire mess. We have to get this sorted in order to use Copilot better. Can we please deal with that? And they said, look, we've just got to chunk it down because some people are going to be afraid. If you start mentioning AI, they're going to just be afraid. So let's just chunk it down and say, tidy it up first, leave AI for a minute, just tidy it up. Then we'll go on to the benefits of the AI. So I know that sounds really basic and simple and not very sophisticated, but actually I had to listen and say, you're quite right there. Those people over there aren't quite as quick as those people over there. And I've got to understand that and make sure that they're bringing along. So, the innovation can be shiny, just as Stuart said, really shiny over here. But unless the people take it up and can do it well and have confidence, what is the point?
Yeah.
So it's just Stuart said it, it's the culture and it's the people.
Yeah. So focusing on that versus the hype, because
I think so.
It could be great. And from your perspective, Stuart, what are your thoughts on that in terms of that balance?
So I think this is something that charities purpose-led organizations, they really excel at, because charities are generally filled with very passionate people who are really, really committed to a cause and have got it flowing through their veins. And that balance between compliance and doing the right thing for the people who you're trying to help, and whilst also trying to do it in the most effective way, is something that we're so used to dealing with. We're very strong on it. And so for me, it's all about governance. It's about those committees, those boards, getting those people together, working through in workshops where we actually think, well, what does this actually mean for the people we're trying to help? And actually, this is one of the easiest things for charities, I think, because charities really, really understand this, and they've done this time and time again. So I'm pretty confident that organizations are striking that balance pretty well at the moment.
Great. And Camryn, you're going out and meeting with lots of leaders and across the kind of not-for-profit third sector all the time, and talking to them every day and talking to candidates. And so where do you see leaders getting stuck or maybe overthinking the AI piece from your perspective as a recruiter?
I think there's two main areas that I highlight from meeting leaders, and it's repetitive. It's not as if it's, the last two person I met yesterday. It's a repetitive theme throughout our conversations, and it is having that lack of specialised talent being one of the top barriers. And that can be anything from business analysts to change managers to specialists within fundraising that have that sort of AI knowledge to support how the future is going to look within that business. The close second is something that I don't know, Stuart, you might have something to say about this, but there's a misconception of responsibility. I think leaders wrongly assume that AI should solely be with the IT and tech teams rather than being that sort of cross-functional executive strategy. So they often get stuck between balancing the speed and the people, and they then adopt the AI quickly to drive efficiency, but then struggle with the understanding of the skills their teams need for the future because they're continuously evolving. And it's then that part of how to keep work meaningful for your employees. So yeah, there is a definite theme of conversation everyone that I visit, but I don't know if Stuart, you speak to a lot more chief execs, so you might have a different opinion there.
Yeah.
So
Stuart, what
Camryn,
are your thoughts?
Camryn, yeah, I definitely agree with that. If you're thinking about this as an IT thing, you're just in the wrong place. You've got to be thinking where leaders get stuck is if you get stuck into the technology, it's it's taken in the wrong direction. You need to think about this in terms of capability. It's about your organizational capability. And the people who are going to help you in an organization to make this work are not necessarily the IT people. It's the transformation, it's the change, it's the adoption people, it's the training people, it's your learning and development people. All of these people who understand about how to change an organization and get people to work in a more effective way. Those are the ones who are going to help you. If you get stuck into it as being an IT thing, you're going to get nowhere, and you're just going to get completely overwhelmed by it, and start feeling. I mean, one of the biggest things that there is about technology and IT is it quite often instills a little bit of healthy fear into people, where people get a little bit scared of tech, and they get a little bit sort of like, whoa, what can this do? What can't it do? Is it going to mess up everything I'm trying to do? And that's completely the wrong way to think about it. What you need to do is reframe it into something which people will feel comfortable with, what people will embrace, and so moving away from that IT tech view of it is really important.
Yeah, showing the value add maybe outside of tech. And so Pippa, in your role at the moment, what changes are you already seeing in terms of how your teams operate, communicate, or even make decisions, because of the impact of AI in your organization?
Well, I'm observing. I mean, I'm seeing some people do things and just going with it, and it's great, and applying things. But I'm also seeing fear and worry about the governance, about, am I doing this wrong? Am I going to put some data on there that isn't correct? So they need those guardrails. In fact, we've got those guardrails already, but there's still a fear because it's unknown. But what I'm seeing, I suppose, there are great strides being taken by some, but it's the difference in adoption, enthusiasm, ability of people within the organization that I'm observing. And that, I just find that interesting. But I think my challenge is to try and get everybody, as many people along as I can, at a similar sort of pace. And I think that's quite difficult. And to Stuart's point about culture, and about having culture carriers, one of the people that told me to wind my neck in the meeting was actually a service manager running our services. She was not IT, but she is a change person, and she was thinking about her team and how this would land with them. So I am seeing great efficiencies, one, but I'm also seeing the interesting part of culture and people and the difference in uptake and confidence. And I think actually that's the challenge, because the gizmos are there. It's the getting the folk to operate and be confident and happy with the gizmos that's going to transform them so that they can go on and do something clever and human.
The adoption that will
Yeah.
help them kind of do a lot
I
of
think
the
so.
heavy lifting maybe in their role.
Yeah, exactly. To
Yeah,
get rid of all that heavy lifting and to do something that they might not otherwise have even seen themselves doing. And
yeah.
that's quite hard for someone when they hold dear their skill of something technical.
Mhm.
And if that's gone, to Camryn's point about worry, then what else are they going to do? And I think it's about us finding that in people.
Mhm. Yeah, and if we're looking at kind of the impact on internal, external communications and also key stakeholder expectations, um, maybe Cameron, I'll come to you. What are as a consequence of that impact, what are the kind of the new pressures or opportunities that you're seeing emerging for managers and leaders?
Yeah, I think the new pressures and opportunities is, managers and leaders are seeing, I suppose, less repetitive tasks consuming their team members' times. I think if that's how they're using it appropriately, I think sometimes that's the early stages that work well internally. Externally, I suppose it is just that risk and governance. Are they communicating it right? Are they putting the right data out there? Is there buy-in from the senior leadership team to support that impact? So I think it's still quite early in a lot of the third sector organisations that I'm working with. So the parts that they're doing well is taking the repetitive tasks away. The parts that they could do better with is particularly their fundraising channels, where they can use it to streamline some of their source flows, look at where the donations are coming in, and trying to support their fundraising teams, because let's be honest, the budgets are tight in the third sector. There's other ways that people are trying to generate income, and I do think if they got this part right, it would support with some of the income generation within their
Yeah.
organisation. But I think that's still a wee bit a while away, just well, it's still quite early in some of the businesses. Some maybe down in England, Stuart, that you've worked with, there might be loads that are advanced, but particularly from a Scotland perspective, we're still quite early in the approach and what we're using it for, what I hear and talk about anyway.
Yeah. Thanks, Camryn. And what's your perspective on that, Pippa, in terms of those kind of new pressures and opportunities emerging for leaders?
Well, I was thinking it slightly when you talked about comms, and I'm thinking about authenticity actually. I'm thinking about the pressure and what to Cameron's point about the big boys, I think that, you know, big charities with lots of budget and lots of people on this, and they're all doing it and they're good at change and all that. I think that's you know, we smaller ones are at risk of just losing it, of like going, we've gone, you know, they've gone so far ahead. But I think in terms of the opportunities, there is an opportunity to retain that authenticity of comms, marketing, of brand. If people are here not from charities, it's just the same with a brand that you're trying to push. People out there can see if you're using AI to dump a whole load of stuff, to scattergun it and go, oh, well, just because the output's great, it's going, and we must be doing a great job with our branding. Actually, you've got to keep an eye on authentic branding. For me, I think that might be a bit off-piste, but that's immediately what I thought when you talked about external things. For me, that's what I would keep an eye on.
Yeah, it's pretty evident really straight away if something is so AI generated, particularly from a
Yeah,
branding perspective.
remain authentic.
Yeah.
And there's not a replacement for human authenticity, I'm afraid.
Thank you. And I mean, kind of going on to the, I suppose, the opportunities, challenges, maybe risks for organizations, not-for-profit organizations, but this again has a wider application across all sectors probably. And Stuart, if I could start with you, yeah, what do you see as the biggest opportunity? I noticed a recent study estimated that UK organisations could see something like a 11.5% increase in productivity, worker productivity, on the back of AI innovation. Now, actually, I don't think it had actually come out yet. This was what leaders were estimating. So it still has to be seen where that goes. But what do you see as the biggest opportunities that AI presents, specifically within charities and not-for-profits, Stuart?
So I'd say so there are an immense number of opportunities. Let's not shy away from that. That's what the challenge is, and that's where people are getting stuck. If you put them into the buckets of things around the people you're trying to help, the way you raise your money, and productivity. Now the fundraising side of things, which I think Pippa mentioned a while ago. So lots of opportunities there. But one of the things we have to remember is that AI is moving very, very fast, and regulation is not keeping up. When we looked back at things around data, for example, data protection regulation came in about 1995, and then it was about 2016, I think, when GDPR came along, and things moved quite slowly there, and people had time to adjust. With AI, that's not the case. Things are moving exceptionally fast, and regulation is way behind. So there are lots of challenges around how you use AI and fundraising, and there's lots of opportunities to get it wrong. In terms of, I'm going to push back on the productivity side of things a little bit, because as charities, third sector organizations, we're people-driven organizations. We're made up of staff, but also thousands or tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of volunteers. And the people are the heart of what the organization does. And there's also not in profit-driven organizations, there's a direct link between money coming in and what you do, and the productivity is a big part of that. Whereas in charities and third sector organizations, the public are entrusting their money to you to do something really good and to make really good use of that money. And productivity is a good part of this, because you want to show that you're using that money as effectively as possible. but also you have a lot of people who really understand the problem and really understand it well. And so I'd say charities must be very careful not to throw that out and just to say, I know the answer is, if we're going to become really productive here, instead of having 1,000 staff, we can do this with 100 staff. Instead of having 100,000 volunteers, we can do it with only 5,000 volunteers, because that is patently nonsense. And everyone listening to this will realize that ditching all your volunteers so you can become more productive is a stupid thing to do. And so I think that's the challenge with charities around productivity. The final bit I mentioned was all around beneficiaries, vulnerable people, the people you're trying to help, the whatever your cause is. That is obviously where the really big opportunity is, and trying to get that right and understanding how you can reinvent your organization to do what you're trying to do, but using the new technology. That is the really big prize that should be sought after.
Thank you, Stuart. Camryn, what are your thoughts on that in terms of those biggest opportunities? What are you seeing in the market?
I mean, Stuart, you covered loads of great parts there. I think I could probably just add an example. I don't might lean into productivity ever so slightly, but it's more from a marketing and comms context. Just given, I met a client recently and they went, "Oh, Camryn, we're really excited for this webinar. Let me tell you what we tried out recently." And it was essentially they needed a graphic for 32 different channels or 32 different consumers, or they just needed a 32 image graphic that had been edited that many times. So they created one graphic, populated it into ChatGPT and created an intelligent prompt where they got those 32 images that they needed for the purpose that they were putting it out to. And that took them, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes. But if this individual in the team had to create those images 32 times, they would have spent the majority of the day doing that. So that's the only bit I've got to say about productivity, and that it worked well from this marketing communications team in terms of what they needed to do to generate these images. And also they did review the images to make sure that they were correctly branded, everything that they had asked for in their prompt had come through. So they did have to put that human element on there, but it did help with productivity in a way that their time could have been spent in different places rather than creating those graphics when they had a one-size-fits-all message, and then they could edit it for their team. So that was the only thing I probably have to say. But apart from that, I think, Stuart, you covered quite a lot of the opportunities there.
Thank you, Camryn. I don't know, Pippa, have you got anything to add to that in terms of your personal experience right now, other than what you've already said?
No,
No?
I would
Okay.
say
Yeah.
perfect, lovely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So I think, Stuart, you've touched on this, but obviously there are a lot of issues to consider with regard to using AI. So, data security, the ethical, the legal, the reputational management are some of the key risks that particularly, well, I think all organizations are thinking about right now in terms of use of AI. So Stuart, from your experience already, what are the biggest risks for leaders if AI adoption goes wrong? What have you seen or experienced to date that maybe that wasn't the right track to take, and others can learn from?
So we could run an entire day's session on this single question, and because there's so many different things you can have, from something that Pippa mentioned earlier about losing your brand, your direction, losing your cultural fit, losing internal capability, reputational issues. But the one that I want to focus on is relevance. So that this is a really big picture answer if AI adoption goes wrong, because the thing that I've seen where AI adoption does go wrong is adoption is really hard. Getting people to understand new ways of working and change is really difficult. And something else that Pippa mentioned earlier was around large charities having the money to invest in that change and smaller organizations perhaps not being able to keep up. Well, I'm going to flip it around, because one of the things that we've seen is that this technology is so advanced, there's so much we can do with it, but the adoption is way behind. It's just not keeping up. And the challenges that larger organizations have is that change is really difficult. So trying to shift a large organization to a new way of working, boy, is that hard. That's the sort of thing that takes big programs of change, governance boards, trying to understand, getting everyone together. And that's so difficult, which maybe is an advantage that smaller organizations have. And so if AI adoption goes wrong, what I'm saying is you'll put huge amounts of effort in, you won't see any results, you'll waste time and money, and you actually will find yourself becoming less and less capable in a world where others are actually succeeding. And so what I've seen, one of the examples I'm going to give here is there's a lot of take up of productivity type tools, sort of things that sit within mainstream IT products, things that sit within, like, for example, Office 365 and Copilot or Gemini and things like that. And you can, in an organization, just buy the licenses, give them out to people, and not really focus on anything more than that, and you just pay for the licenses. That's when AI adoption goes wrong, because you really need to be thinking about how we're going to get people to get the most from it, how we're going to support them, how we're going to train them, do all of the checks and the checks you have to do before you roll these things out, to do with document permissions and to do with document retention, and making sure you're doing all that stuff in the background to make sure you're not accidentally exposing things you shouldn't be, to make sure that you're using it all right. So all sorts of things could go wrong, but the biggest thing is you'll just waste loads of time and money, and you'll be left behind.
Yeah, completely agree with that. And I think there's examples in our industry where there are very, very large organizations spending lots of money. And it feels like it's a bit like turning around an oil tanker in terms of rolling out that change. Whereas actually being smaller and more agile and maybe more adaptable can be a benefit in this instance. So, that's interesting. Camryn, what have you got to add to that in terms of some of the risks with regard to AI adoption that you're hearing from leaders you talk to every day?
I think this is going to extend from probably what Pippa and Stuart's mentioned today, but the third sector staff, or the candidates that I speak to all the time, they're very mission driven. They want to work for these organisations because of their purpose. So if there is a poor AI rollout, or they're not bought into what has been delivered, often they will feel replaced or devalued. They might not trust AI, especially if it fails. They will feel like they might lose their job as well. So I do think they then could have burnout if it's poorly implemented as well. So they want to work for the mission or the purpose of the organisation, not then feel like that part's been devalued when they're trying to communicate what they're there to do. And I do think in some cases they've mentioned to me before, if they've seen something happen, is, there could be an over automation of the human services. So that lack of efficiency might not then replace compassion, which is often what people supporting these charities want to feel. They don't want to feel like they've just been a cog in a wheel. They want to feel that personalised communication style, or whatever your job is. But that's mostly what I hear about when I talk to candidates. But I think the mission is always the thing that supersedes in these instances.
Thank you, Camryn. And what, from your perspective, are you seeing, Pippa?
Well, I was delighted to hear Stuart flip my concern about big charities, and you're dead right. And I just wanted to say, actually, within a smaller charity, I suppose I'm going to say something controversial. Sorry, everyone, that I think with this, I'm seeing the fact that we will perhaps make some mistakes. Should we just own that? Should we just say we're not all going to do it perfectly? Like, we're not the finished article. I think sometimes people feel, oh my goodness, we've got to do this all right, etc. I've already made mistakes, but because I've put guardrails in, and because I'm doing it in a little scale, thank you, Stuart, because I'm, I suppose, cautious, we're doing little teeny weeny things. Test and learn with a few people on a little project. It's failed. Never mind, we'll dump that. Let's move on to something else. But where something does work, let's just roll that out. I mean, this is not rocket science. Everybody knows this. But actually, I think as leaders, we need to hold that responsibility, and that, all right, we have failed there. We haven't exposed a great big load of data, but actually, if we do things small, the risk is reduced and we can move on more quickly. That's what I'm seeing, and that's how I approach it. I suppose because I'm cautious and I haven't done this before. So yeah, I think that could be a huge advantage, Stuart. Thank you for mentioning that. I feel much better.
Good, good. Well, I hope someone else has got something out of that. And Pippa, staying with you, actually, just thinking about that. As a not-for-profit leader, what do you think those types of leaders need to specifically think about in terms of ethics, trust, and transparency when using AI tools? Because you've clearly given this some thought in your role, given the way you're rolling things out.
Yes, I have, and I've had to really think because I'm someone that wants to do things quickly, and I'm sure lots of leaders do, and they want to, they want to make change and they want to drag everybody along really quickly. But I always come back, and it's really, I think what we need to do in terms of ethics is, if as long as we're making the decisions with the either solving the problem that we have in front of us or helping to solve that problem, and keeping the actual beneficiary, whether that's a tree, a whale, or a person, at the heart of the decisions we're making, keeping an eye on that. So keeping that helicopter view so that when you're communicating that, why are we doing this? Context and keeping back to the purpose. I think for me, that's what we should be thinking about, and how we use our human assets as leaders to help people understand that and bring them with us.
Thank you, Pippa. And Stuart, what's your perspective on that in terms of, that ethics, trust, and transparency piece?
So it needs to be owned from an organizational sense. This is similar to an answer I gave earlier. Don't go down the tech route. Go down the organizational governance route. I think one of the things that a question that I put out there is, within organizations where we have people doing work, we have a really good area of our business which handles everything to do with the getting the most from those people and handling the risk around things that might go wrong. Our people team, our HR team. There's a question about what should that look like from an AI world, and whether it's time for what would an AI team look like, the equivalent type thing. And it definitely ain't an IT team. It's something very different because it's a different skill set, it's a different set of capabilities. So if you're thinking about ethics, trust, and transparency, do you actually need a bit of your organization that thinks about how to get the most from AI, from how to make it work well, how to make sure you don't fall down the holes in the same ways you do with your people?
Thank you. I've just got a question, actually. You've brought up HR, and it's probably pretty topical given we're talking about kind of that transparency, that trust, that ethics. So somebody thinking about HR issues specifically and saying people using AI to generate documents, i.e. procedure manuals, possibly policy, I'd imagine as well. But how, I suppose in the real world, and maybe I'll go to you, Pippa, because, I'm guessing this has kind of come across your maybe radar, but how to validate the reality of these procedures, because you still will need an individual, a person, to vet them from the perspective of, I suppose, the values and the purpose of the organization. Have you experience of that, Pippa?
Yeah, I'm just for clarity, you mean if you put something, write me a policy on AI, and out it
Yes.
spews, and you go,
Yes.
there it is, and you go,
Yes.
oh, lovely, we'll just adopt that.
Yeah, we'll take that. Yeah.
I'm really just a common sense. I'm just a down to basics person. Read it. Does it make sense? I'd be picking up the blower to my friend somewhere else and going, hi, I've got this thing. Could you just sense check that for me? I mean, I think it's networks, community. I ask for help. I ask my colleagues, my peers, my people outside. I think you just have to keep it common sense. Does
Yeah.
this make sense? Is it ticking the boxes I need to? Can I read it? Will people understand it? And then I ask clever people next to me in my organization who are better at this than I am and go, what do you think of that? And then it's iterative, isn't it? But the thing is, it can help you with the blank piece of paper, as we all know. But
Yeah.
I do think I do think the human element and keeping our connections and picking up the phone to people, that may be a very unsophisticated answer, but that's
No.
my common sense. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
I chip in with a further
Yes.
answer on that and an analogy? So something I've read is where people have used AI for creating code. They found that it's like huge efficiencies. Basically, it means you can get AI to write all your code. but there's still that small 5% of errors, 10% of errors you need human. And organizations are finding that whilst they don't need all the people creating the code, they then need loads of people to check it. And that's a really difficult thing. And what I would say is the same issue is here around policy creation and everything like that. Perhaps you don't need all the people to create the policies, but then you need just as many people to go through and actually check it. And the problem is that the checking is, if I'm honest, a lot less exciting work. It's the sort of bit that everyone's going to go, I can't be bothered with that. Yeah, looks good enough, tick. And
Yeah.
so there's potentially a big problem there that
Yeah.
we need to be aware of.
Yeah, over trusting what's
Yeah.
been produced,
Yeah.
and as you say, it feels like a very tedious, boring job. So is that going to get checked? Yeah. Camryn, just coming to you from a recruitment perspective and what you're seeing in your market and your perspective on the kind of capacity and skills gap that you're seeing. I think you've touched a little bit on this before, but are these particularly acute, do you feel in the charity not-for-profit sector, or is it something you're seeing across the board?
Yeah, I think we've touched on some of the skills, I think, throughout the conversation from all of us actually. So digital data, strategic leadership capabilities, change management, Stuart, you nodded to that, specialist fundraising, data analysis and interpretation. So I think, some of the specific gaps are all around AI prompting and digital strategy and how to manage the online and supporter journeys. There's one bit that's maybe a bit of a segue to this, but I don't know if it's just to give a bit of a sort of higher sort of opinion here on from a recruitment and retention challenge, the sector can't match the salaries of the private sector. So the private sector also want the people in the public and third sector with this skill set. So it is that mission and purpose driven piece that if you're not money motivated, will retain your staff. But the private sector will be all over the people with the skill shortage as well. So there is highly sought after roles like data analysts, but there can then be higher turnover in your organisation if the private sector are snatching them up and throwing money at people. So I think that's something that I talk about all the time. Obviously, some of the benefits outweigh what we can offer in the public and third sector. The private sector are quite quickly catching up with us on that. So when things are moving so fast, is it going to be financial motivations that ultimately will remove people from our public and third sector organisations? So I thought it was just something I'd throw in there because I hear about that as well quite often, in addition to the skills gaps when it comes to looking for these kinds of people.
Yes. Good. Just to kind of move on, because this is a question I really do want to cover and just spend a little bit of time on. So I think we've all seen the surveys, and the most recent one I've seen is something like 27%. Actually seemed like a low figure to me, but of UK workers specifically were worried that their jobs could disappear in the next few years as a result of AI. But clearly that's a growing, and it's something I think, Pippa, maybe you've mentioned it, people are feeling it, and people and you, Camryn. So I suppose if I go to you first, Pippa, and then maybe I'll come to you all. But what do you feel good leadership looks like when you've got teams, employees, if they're only human to be thinking this, is they're kind of hearing about it every day. And as we said at the start, everyone focuses possibly a lot on the negative. So Pippa, what does good leadership look like for you when you're dealing with employees who you can tell are worried, concerned?
Yeah, God, it is difficult actually because you've got to focus. As Camryn just said, you could just go. People can be through. I find that private companies are now beginning to be purpose driven, so they're sort of almost changing into charities, making out that they've got some kind of higher purpose, and so people could get that good feeling with them. But I think that it's about leadership is about, I suppose, reassuring, steadying, listening. I think it's listening and being able to shift, I suppose, and address head on with honesty what the concerns are, and try and almost show. Camryn said lead from the front. If you need to take a person in your organization who is intransigent or doesn't get it or is afraid, I think not being afraid to just tackle that head on. Obviously that takes a lot of time, but I think that's what leadership is about. And then, as to Stuart's point, finding the culture carriers that might be in HR or finance or somewhere else, and getting people are just going to ignore me. Oh, it's her again. But they're not going to ignore the person that they trust that sits next to them every day. I've nobbled the person that sits next to them and trust them every day. So they can then do that. They can do my job for me. And I think it's finding those people and sharing with those people and realizing that you're not the person. You don't have to do it. Other people can do this for you and with you. And I think it's absolving ourselves of the responsibility of this entire culture change of everybody. Someone can do it better than you, so let them do it.
Yeah, but getting the message out and communicating
For sure.
and
Yeah,
talking
sorry, I
about
didn't
it.
articulate that very well,
Yeah.
Claire, but yeah.
No, I agree.
Thanks. That's exactly what I meant. Thank you.
Camryn, what do you thank you, Pippa. And Camryn, what do you think? Because you're talking to candidates every day, job seekers, you know, who are out there. Are they talking to you about their kind of concerns in that way and their worry
Yeah.
about job security?
They're quite anxious, I think, which is natural. I don't think there's huge scaremonger tactics going on now as to what might have happened when the buzzwords were thrown about a few years ago. I do think the anxiety might come from a lot of the external noise, not always internally within the business, but I do think they are displaying more curious behaviours than before and maybe tackling it in their personal lives rather than, waiting to be told by their manager what to do. I mean, one of my candidates told me recently they went, I need to eat this much grams of protein, this many calories. So I just put it into ChatGPT and it gave me a meal plan. So they're doing different things in their personal life to test it and then taking it to the managers to say, hey, look, this is what I tried. Can I test something in the organisation? And then their managers allowed them, well, not allowed them as if they're not allowed, but said, let's work together on it. And there's been a few examples like that recently where they felt like they can upskill in their role and then maybe take their role in a different direction, particularly if they've been in an organisation for, 5+ years where they might be a bit comfortable and not adapting to change in their business. So that's a couple of the conversations I've had recently, but it's not as scaremongered as what might have happened a couple of years ago. It's a bit more softer these
Yeah,
days.
it's evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So on that note, really, what practical steps can organizations take now to prepare their workforce for, this year, next year and beyond? Because, the pace of change has just been phenomenal, to anything we've seen before. So, Camryn, have you got any thoughts on that in terms of how you would advise business leaders or charity leaders in that area?
Yeah, I think definitely invest in upskilling and reskilling programs. There's a lot of free programs in the Scottish market. Stuart's got a business, so I'm just going to promote him while I'm here. I'm sure you can do some sessions with any leaders in the third sector across Scotland. I think ask for support, get a mentor, and test it for yourself as well. I think the culture where people can experiment with AI responsibly builds their confidence and keeps their work purposeful. So I think that test and learn part is really important. I'm a big advocate for mentorship by osmosis, but I think in an AI capacity, you do have to have sessions like put in your diary, not just, hey, go and grab a chair and sit beside me and watch what I'm doing here. I think it does need to be a bit of a dovetail approach of let's put some sessions in and do it together and go through what we need to achieve today, but also going to pull your chair up and let's do it together and see what's worked well for us recently. So I think mentorship by osmosis dovetailed with some sessions with leaders or outsourced training providers will help for the future.
Yeah. Stuart, can I ask you about that as well, given your experience and what you do day
Yeah.
to day?
So yeah, I'll give you my personal experience. So as an individual, as a consultant, someone who works outside of organizations, I've been able to transform the way I work quite a lot in the way that I see what I can achieve now in a short period of time is light years different to what I could do a year ago or 2 years ago. The value I can give, if someone pays for a day of my time, the value I can give in that day of time is so much different. And the way that that's worked for me is simply to do with training and experience, just training, learning, experimenting, and all of those things are what is so important for organizations to do, to set up a framework, a way of working that your organization is really considering how it's going to build your staff. When you think about AI, as I keep saying, it starts thinking about a technology thing, but the way to succeed with it is think about as a people thing. Think about how are you going to get your people to change to, there's this great new thing that's out there, how can I work in the most effective way with it?
So that training and experience, almost creating a safe space where you're getting people in a room and them just trying stuff out and engaging with it.
Definitely. And the thing is, because everything's changing so fast at the moment, don't go and put loads of money into some big project or something like that. That's really a bad idea, because you'll find that 3 months along the line everything's changed. But if you invest in your staff, that's something that's just a winning formula, hands down.
Yeah, lovely. Um, Camryn, if I come back to you in terms of, in your opinion, how should recruitment and I suppose when organizations are thinking about role design, so how they recruit and how they think about roles, how would that or should that change in response to development in AI?
Yeah, I think it's a great segue from what Stuart just mentioned there about investing in your people. I do think recruitment should focus more on behaviours at the early stages anyway than tasks. So people that are adaptable, creative, that will collaborate and hold, I suppose, an ethical judgment. I do think in the early stages of recruitment, I've seen organisations designing roles where AI will still handle the routine work, but they don't really need to have that experience. They just look at the behaviour of the individual that they're bringing on board and looking at, do they hold the purpose of our business? Do they have that goal of wanting to work for us? Is it someone that we can work with? I think time and time again, I do see organisations, definitely from a permanent capacity, hiring like a 7 or an 8 out of 10. That's maybe how they would describe them, because they can mould them with their behaviours. In the contract world, you need someone that's a 12 or a 13 out of 10, because they'll come in, hit the ground running, and support you through a project style role to get you through what you need to do. But they'll then hopefully leave the areas that they've covered behind for the permanent members of staff. So I think behaviour focus definitely on the permanent side to work with your staff. On the contract side, yeah, they do look for skilled gurus and pay quite crazy day rates these days, but it does work twofold when it comes to what they've achieved in the business in such a short space of time.
Yeah.
That's what I've seen.
Yeah, so behaviors and attitude
Mhm.
is gonna, and so that, being open to adoption and having an open mind on things. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, Quick question. Yeah, I mean, if someone's coming away from this as a leader and they want to start building out that capability and probably more important, organizational confidence in terms of AI. Pippa, if I could come to you, what's one thing leaders can do in the kind of next, I don't know, 90 days, 3 months or so to do that if they haven't already? I'm guessing most people listening in will have started on this journey, but if they were to slightly change tack, or what would be your advice on that?
Well, I think just try something else. Keep trying new things. Identify a problem, a micro problem that you've got in a process or a thing or whatever it is. Ask your teams, what do you need to solve? What can we help with? And then do what you've probably already done. Get a small team on it, try something, test it, and then review it and see how that went. I think it's fun, it's engaging, and it builds confidence in people. And those people that do it then talk to other people and say, well, we had a go at this and it was fine.
Yeah.
We didn't particularly succeed here, but we made great strides here. And we've done that. Someone mentioned, I think it was Camryn. It was so good, Camryn, when people are doing things on their own in their own lives. We did a little session with quite a big group of staff actually, and just talked them through. Right, someone tell me where you're going on holiday, and live we did it on ChatGPT. Right, what do you want to see? What's your budget? How many people go? And it's just showing, it's almost showing and telling together, I would say. Don't be afraid of doing it together, learning together, failing together, and succeeding together.
Yeah. Stuart, what's your take on that? In the next 90 days, what would you say to a leader you met tomorrow? They wanted to build out that capability and confidence in their organization.
So what I'd say first of all is this answer would change when you ask me. So at the moment it's February 2026. If you ask me
Yeah,
the question in 3 weeks, it might be a different answer.
different.
But at the moment, what I will say is I would say that people are scared of the unknown. They have a fear of the unknown. So do everything you can to stop it being unknown. So what I would suggest right now at this moment in time is I would I would try and get people to go off and spend a day building an agent. Actually get them to do something quite. This is the opposite end of everything else I said. It's about the people, it's about the culture. This one I'm going to give you a very techie answer. I'm going to say get people to go off and do a team building session, get people together, maybe like a hackathon or something like that, but get them to build an agent because it's something that everyone can do. You don't need tech skills, you can actually learn it. And it's not designed, you don't have to write code or anything like that. But as soon as you go through the process of doing that, you understand. It's almost like someone gives you a whole load of Lego bricks and tells you to go and build something out of Lego. And at the end of it, you're like, oh God, I really understand the design process of this and I really understand what it's all about. If you go through that process, it's really simple to do and come out with something in the end, like the end of your pottery class or something. You built something, you're wonderful and you're proud of it, and you're like, can always say, I did this. And so nothing beats that actual learning and
Yeah.
trying something.
Tangible. I like it. I'm going to just pick up a question from the audience because it's quite specific around the kind of maybe the recruitment market right now, Camryn. So worth discussing. So a slight tangent, but from a graduate recruitment point of view, now clearly we don't do a lot of too much entry level, but we talk to clients every day and we know that, they will do a lot of that stuff themselves. But this person's asking, how is AI affecting that job market? Is AI replacing these entry level roles? Because I know there's a lot of, I've seen a lot of press and I've seen recent surveys where it's something like 30% decrease in job roles being advertised at that kind of graduate entry level. So,
Yeah.
Camryn, are you seeing anything in that or hearing from organizations in terms of how they're approaching that part of the market differently?
Yeah, it's difficult to pinpoint if it's AI that is the reason
Mm,
for that. Last year's recruitment market was driven by the economic climate, the national insurance changes. So for graduates last year, it was quite unfair, in my opinion. It was really difficult. There was a lot of graduates coming out with no jobs to go into, and a lot of the cost cutting within organisations was to take a leadership salaries out of the roles and move everyone up. And then the vacant positions was less like lower level paid roles, but they weren't quite graduate roles. They were sort of 27 to 35k roles where you did need a bit of experience. Anyone in the graduate community just now, I would just always focus on getting an internship, doing something while you're at university, whether that's, I don't know, you work in a cafe, and this is very marketing and comms related, so I do apologise, but you could write a social media post about the cafe, or if you're going travelling, write a blog about your travels.
mm,
Try to do something that will put your sort of theory perspective that you've learned at university into practice, whether it's something that you can articulate in a job interview. The I don't see too many graduate roles personally. I think there is big private corporate companies that do have big schemes and it takes, you know, a lot of applications. But if I see something online, I'll share it with the community because I think you don't see them very often. But if you've got internship experience or you've got a family business, try to get some exposure in whatever field that you're in so that when you're applying for roles, you can actually use your theory into practice and articulate that in an interview. So
yeah.
it's not a yes or no answer. It's quite difficult to communicate
No.
that just based on the market that
Yeah.
we've just experienced. This year could be totally different. You just don't know.
I agree with you, Cameron. I think that experience and showing that you've put yourself out there and you're trying, you've got work experience or you've got experience, whether, as you say, you're turning your hobbies into that experience, but demonstrating that's really important to an employer, and it is for us when we hire people at that entry level. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. We're kind of running out of time. For this morning, but I wanted to thank everyone who's taken time out of their day to join us this morning. I hope that you found this session as insightful as I did, but a very big thank you to my three wonderful guests. So thank you to Pippa Johnston, to Stuart McSkimming, and of course to Camryn Anderson for sparing your time and experience with us this morning. Just a quick reminder, everyone who's signed up, we'll share a recording of this session, plus information on how to contact Pippa, Stuart, and Camryn, should you wish to do so within the next 24 hours. So that's coming your way. But in the meantime, thank you all and have a great rest of the day. We